What's up guys, Kara Corey here. Welcome back for another video, or if you're new here, then welcome. Thank you for joining me today. We are gonna do a little sit down chat for today's video. So before we dive right into it, be sure to do all the things like, subscribe, hit the post notification bell. That way you guys are notified each and every time that I upload. Now for today's topic, I'm talking about something maybe a little bit different for this channel, but very, very relevant, and very relevant for me as a dietitian in my career, what I do. But I think this is something that each and every person can maybe relate to, maybe some more than others. Today we're going to be talking about imposter syndrome. And if you're not familiar with that concept or term, I feel like it is discussed a little bit more now with social media being so booming and saturated now that it's very common to feel imposter syndrome. But even if you're not a social media person per se, many of us can feel this. Oftentimes it's more so related to our career, but it can be other things as well in our lives. But imposter syndrome is essentially, by definition, it's like a psychological pattern of this persistent internalized fear that you are going to be kind of put out there as a fraud, that people are going to see you as a fraud, and so you just kind of always maintain this internal fear of being found out to be a fraud. So with that comes a lot of just inadequacy and self-doubt that you have to work through in terms of how you view yourself. Now for myself, I want to share just a little story with you guys. Being a registered dietitian, you guys may look to me as an expert, which, you know, I like to think I'm an expert in the field. And I've been doing this now I've been an RD for well over 10 years now. So you may look to me and think, well, she's not going to feel imposter syndrome. You know, I was here from the beginning on YouTube. I was probably one of the first fitness nutrition based channels out here on social media. However, imposter syndrome is something I have struggled with probably, I would say, all along, but maybe even more so later in my career. So even if you're not new in your career, you can still struggle from it. And interestingly enough, I was supposed to do a presentation actually this past summer. Obviously got canceled due to COVID, but I was being asked to speak to other dietitians about this exact topic, about imposter syndrome. And I went back and forth on whether or not I was even worthy of presenting to another group of dietitians. I definitely felt that persistent fear, that self-doubt. Who do I think I am? I'm gonna be found out to be a fraud. All those types of things I was feeling about doing it. However, with pushing beyond the fear of imposter syndrome, you have to take risks. You have to kind of, with taking risks builds courage, which then builds your self-confidence. So I had signed myself up to do this, and unfortunately it did get canceled due to COVID, but I just kind of wanted to share that even someone like myself, with the thought of doing something new and different, it scared me. It definitely scared me. And also, I belong to a DPG group. For my dietitians who are watching, this is very, very relevant. If you're an entrepreneur of any sort, like myself, in a very different space, if you will, in the virtual online space, I joined the Nutrition Entrepreneurs DPG group. This is not like, I guess it's a plug for them, but I don't get anything for saying this. But I just mentioned this because they come out with like this newsletter. So I received this newsletter probably like a month ago. It was a month or two ago. And the whole thing is basically about imposter syndrome. I open it up. The first page is From Feeling Unworthy to Knowing Your Worth. The second article, Reframe Your Thoughts to Stop Feeling Like a Fraud. Next one, Are You the Best Banana in the Bunch? Next article, What's Keeping You Stuck? And FOFO, The Fear of Being Found Out. And then the last one here, Imposter Syndrome, Will a Real Nutrition Entrepreneur Please Stand Up? So this newsletter came at me and I thought someone literally wrote it for me, because I didn't really know. I had heard of imposter syndrome, but when you're someone who does struggle with this, you almost feel like it's just up in your head and that no one else can relate, or no one else goes through what you go through. So for me to pick this up and to see there is an entire newsletter with several, not just one article, several articles in here geared towards imposter syndrome, it just gave me this sense of calm and feeling like, okay, to know that you're not alone always feels good. Honestly, not because you want to hear other people are struggling, but it makes you feel a little less crazy, if I'm being honest. You feel a little less crazy that you're not the only one that struggles with it. And for me, being a dietitian, being an entrepreneur part-time, I was able to say, okay, I'm not the only one that feels this way. And that's kind of tip one. I'm going to go through with you guys some of kind of the main tips that I gleaned from that and some of the articles I've read to give you guys tips if you're struggling with this as well. And while it is very much pertinent for me in my career, I think it can be pertinent in a lot of other areas in your life as well. In particular, to my dietitian friends out there, dietitian entrepreneurs, those of you that reach out to me saying you're pursuing this field, how do you get started, all those things. This is a great video for you to watch, a great area for you to just kind of be aware of as you're navigating entrepreneurship, because it is so saturated. And as we become more saturated, things become more competitive, especially with dietetics. This is something I had not seen when I first came into this space. There wasn't this level of needing to really compete to stand out as much. So you really almost have to hone in on what your niche is and scream it from the rooftops to really try to grab that audience that you're looking to capture and talk to, because you're not the only one talking about it right now. So it is something that's a little tricky to navigate, but tip number one is just kind of breaking your silence and coming to that realization that you struggle with this. You know, knowing that it is something that you're going through, but it's an actual thing. It's an actual thing that plenty of other people struggle with. So just knowing that first off and kind of recognizing it can help you overcome it, just that feeling of not being alone. The next kind of tip I have for you guys is really acknowledging that feelings are not facts. So it sounds pretty common sense, but this is something I have to remind myself of a lot, because with imposter syndrome, I chronically feel like I'm stupid, or I don't know enough. I don't know as much as the next person. What am I bringing to the table that offers value that someone's not already doing? And so you can kind of have that inadequacy in a way to feel like you're less than, not smart enough, all those things, right? And it's okay. Even the smartest person in the room has probably felt that way before. It doesn't mean that you are not smart. It doesn't mean that you're inadequate. Remember, feelings are not facts. It's okay to feel them, but just remember to separate the two and know what's reality versus just a feeling, and acknowledge the feeling, but know that it's not factual. And that kind of goes into the next tip with understanding that that's not factual, to then focus on your positives and really accentuate and understand and kind of let those positives about yourself flourish, and being able to know what the positives are and what you do bring to the table. Don't focus on other people and allowing them to make you feel inadequate, but focus on what your positives are and what you bring to the table. And while perfectionism is something that's great and really kind of drives and excels you in your career, and being a grinder is really kind of glorified right now. You know, the harder you grind, the better you do in life. And that's okay. Like that perfectionism style really does help drive behavior, right? But it's okay for things to not be perfect. It's okay to know that not everything is going to be perfect. There's no such thing. And with that being said, it's being okay with just kind of moving forward sometimes when things aren't perfect. That holds me back sometimes, even in the YouTube space, where it's interesting being on here as a dietitian, right? Because there's so many other people now that are on YouTube giving you guys nutrition advice, kind of reiterating to you what the current research is, the current diet trends, but maybe don't have the credentials backed up. So for me, I feel a sense of really I can't just get on here and spit off my opinion. I really have to be careful and diligent about what I'm telling you, making sure it is backed up, making sure it's giving you guys the right, correct advice as far as I can research and know, because I've got these credentials attached to it and I am the expert. So it's kind of sorting through for me that balancing act of perfectionism versus just, doing my due diligence as a registered dietitian with the information I'm giving to you guys. Really, the trick is to not obsess over everything being perfect and just kind of understanding and allowing yourself to know mistakes can be made. There's no rules. Mistakes can be made. You're going to be wrong sometimes. Things aren't going to turn out perfectly. And accept that and kind of allow that within yourself. I'm not saying go out and just make a bunch of mistakes. I'm speaking to those of us really struggling with this imposter syndrome. If you've struggled with this, comment below what career you're in or in what ways you've struggled with imposter syndrome. I think it can be really helpful for those of us who do come and watch this video to maybe see that you're not alone, which is why I am disclosing with you guys my own personal struggles with it. So for myself, I know that I do the best job I can with giving you guys the content that I do and having it backed up, but it's not to say I've never made mistakes. I've had people write in the comments like, hey, did you see this article or did you know this? And nutrition is one of those tough spaces now where so many people have access to information, and staying up to date with each and every article and latest diet trend, it's a lot. It's a full-time job trying to stay up to date on all of it. And so the reality of being a dietitian is either honing in on your niche or just kind of trying to stay up to date as best as you can, and continuing to learn, and with that, I'll be the first one to say I don't know everything, and I'd rather at least put information out there, and if I make mistakes, learn from it. That's okay too. Understanding that mistakes being made doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't turn those feelings into facts. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you dumb. It doesn't make you inadequate. It makes you a human being, and we all make mistakes, and sometimes we say things wrong or incorrectly, could have done things better, right? I think we can all relate to that. So what's the worst that happens when a mistake occurs? You use it as a learning experience. You use it as a tool to grow and get better. It can be a tool that'll give you more, maybe it gives you that push that, next time I do need to put more time into this project before I turn it in. Maybe I do need to prepare a bit more before I give a presentation speaking in front of a group of people. It's a learning experience. It doesn't mean you just say, oh, it was a mistake and blow it off. If you want to get better from it, you evaluate it, you use it as a growing experience for you to improve on those feelings of feeling like a fraud. That actually is my next tip for you guys, which is just developing a new way to learn and grow from mistakes, because we're all gonna make them. So kind of think about how you can use them to your advantage, because it happens to everyone. My next tip for you guys is to write your own rules. There isn't a set rule book for how things have to be. It's similar to when I speak to you guys about the food rules we may create for ourselves that are just kind of silly and unnecessary. Maybe you've created some of those own rules that have fed into your own insecurities and feeling like an imposter. So I do this to myself quite frequently too, where I tell myself if there's things I don't know, well, I should have known that. I should have known that. And sometimes maybe, Kara, you should have known that. But other times, maybe, Kara, you give yourself some grace and understand everything that you have on your plate, and that no, you're not going to know everything. And maybe you instead look at that as an opportunity to say, that's an area that interests me that I wasn't super familiar with. So I'm going to use that little bit of encouragement to then put a little bit more of my focus and time into exploring and learning more into that topic. So it doesn't have to always be this negative bashing yourself, further worsening that feeling of inadequacy. Instead, kind of recognizing what silly rules you've created and looking at them differently, and kind of treating that scenario differently. Instead of feeling like I should have known that, take that opportunity to say, no, I couldn't have known everything, but it interests me, so I want to learn a little bit more about it. Another tip for you guys is developing a new script. This one's really important for me. I've done this a lot as I've jumped into different careers in my life and different job changes. We have a tendency to put certain expectations on ourselves. So you have the ability to write your own script, just like you write your own rules. Develop a new script for how you're walking into something. I gave you guys the example of me going into lecture, a big group of dietitians, something I haven't done in a number of years or ever. Have I ever just lectured dietitians? I've never actually just done a dietitian lecture, to be honest with you. So for me, that first internal script was like, who do I think I am? I am going to expose myself as a fraud. This is an educated group of people. They're going to see that I don't know enough to be speaking to them. So I created this whole kind of irrational script in my head based on my own fears and doubts within myself. Instead, you flip that script around and say, you know what? I'm going to take the risk. I'm going to take this opportunity. And this is my first time doing something like this. So I'm going to use this experience to share with them what I know. And I'm confident they're going to learn something from me because I have something different to bring to the table. So there's just that different mental shift that needs to occur and really sort out what is fact and fiction in your mind. What are kind of some of those irrational fears versus what's reality? A couple other tips to help you guys out in terms of imposter syndrome is just visualizing your own success. Instead of always getting stuck in the fear and the what if scenario, before you even commit to something or move forward with your business or with your career. Instead of staying there, visualize the success that can occur and could occur. Think about that aspect. Think about, when I was training for a marathon, my first marathons that I ever did, I wasn't sure if I could complete it, but instead of taking each and every training run thinking about, I'm not sure if I can do this, I don't know if I can do this, I took each and every training run and visualized myself crossing that finish line. And with my bodybuilding, it was the same. I took each and every training session and visualized myself on stage. I didn't sit there and sit in my car and not go into the gym and work out because I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can succeed. I don't know if I can get on that stage. No, I got up, I got my butt in the gym, I worked as hard as I could, visualizing that end goal. So the same is true with any of your goals, whether it's career related or not. Instead of getting stuck in your fears, think about the success. Also, really important right now too, I think that with living in a world of likes and comments and numbers and subscribers and all that kind of stuff, we look for rewards elsewhere. We look for other people to pat us on the back, to tell us how good we're doing, how great we are, blah, 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 blah. It's the world we kind of live in now if you are in social media. But you almost need to take a step back and learn how to just reward yourself, because no one knows better than you when you've done a good job and when it is time to pat yourself on the back for what you've done. Whether it's something simple as putting a post on Instagram talking about how you've grown over the years, whatever it may be, something as simple as that you feel proud of, that you did that. You put yourself out there, you took a risk, whether it's you starting your YouTube channel after being scared for years and not knowing how it's gonna do. The fact that you took the initiative and you did it, pat yourself on the back. Learn to start rewarding yourself and quit relying on validation from others. Now, I'm not saying don't surround yourself in a good support group with people whose opinions you do trust, because you're going to get a lot of opinions at the end of the day that don't really matter. You have to also sort out whose opinions matter to you. Social media is a very noisy world. A lot of people can start to take up space in your head that sure as shit ain't paying you rent. So you need to really sort out who's important, whose opinions do you listen to? Know that first off, but also remember rewarding yourself and acknowledging yourself when you know you did good and when you know you did a good job, or when you know you at least put yourself out there and put in the effort. Favorites that I've implemented many times in my career is fake it till you make it. Because the most successful people have also done that, where sometimes you aren't always going to know the right way. You're not always going to know the perfect thing, the perfect way to implement something, but you can't always just sit on ideas and sit on everything. You're never going to get anywhere with your life. So sometimes you do have to just fake it till you make it with trying new things. And that just goes back to when you do that, when you take that risk and put yourself out there, only good can come from it, you guys. If you have the right kind of perception of what you're going to get from things, only good can come from it. Maybe people will make fun of you, maybe they won't support you, all those what if scenarios, who cares? You know at the end of the day why you're doing it and what the purpose is. So, you know, sometimes you do just have to jump in, fake it till you make it a little bit. I've done that plenty of times and it works out sometimes, okay? Other times maybe it doesn't, and you learn from it and you say, yeah, maybe I should have done this ahead of time. Again, learning experience. But all of these tips I gave you kind of go back to working on the inner self, working on feeling more okay with who you are, and instead of focusing so much on everyone else, bring the focus back to you and don't let imposter syndrome hold you back in any aspect of your life. Now, you may have watched this whole video and you're still kind of like, well, what do I do with all this? Where do I go from here? It does require you to do a little work. Think about some of the tips I gave you and think about kind of reestablishing your mindset with some of the scenarios that I brought up. It will be helpful, but it does take some internal work, and the only person that can do it is you. So I hope you guys found this video helpful. There's a lot of helpful resources out there, in particular for my dietitian friends, tons of resources with that Nutrition Entrepreneur DPG group. You may want to check that out. I do find it's worth the annual fee, but that's going to be it for me in this video, guys. I hope you did enjoy it, and I'll see you in the next one.